everybody. Welcome to the 43rd Asian American International Film Festival. Today we are here in a live stream with the crews of our short documentary blog, Through Practice. We're so excited to have you all here. We would love to first thank our partners, our community partners, ADOC, TAP New York, and Korean American Story for partnering with us on this Doc Live Q&A. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please send them in using the chat on Facebook Live or on Twitch, and we will ask them. All right, and so to kind of start it all off, I would love to have everybody introduce themselves and kind of what your role in the film was, and also give us a quick summary of your film. And we can start with Anthony.
Okay, my name is Anthony Newen, and I'm director of Farming Slowly. And Farming Slowly basically follows my cousin, who's a farmer, and she operates 2/3 of an acre of a farm. And basically it's just her working, and it follows her daily routine and what she has to go through to get from crops to harvest to market.
And then Amanda.
Just unmuting myself. I'm Amanda Anmin Wong. I am a director, and the film that I have here is called An Object of Merit. It's about, it sort of asks this question of what makes an ordinary bowl beautiful? Like, what is pottery art? And so it sort of follows the journey of this Korean-Canadian ceramic artist named Min Jae Lee, and sort of exploring the influences on his art, both the sort of Korean side, the Canadian side, and in terms of functional aesthetics and what that means.
And then Jordan and Ian, we'll go to you.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Jordan. I'm director of Between the Notes. And so ours is all about classical music, where we follow 4 artists and the host, Ling Zhao Liang, who's a Taiwanese masterclass violinist who hosted the Taipei Music and Academy Festival. So basically we just spent a month over the summer following him around and just documenting all the students at this festival, and just learned how passionate they are about music. And I was able to, dig in deeper with each of the students to figure out like where their drive comes from.
Hi, I'm Ian. I was producer and cinematographer on Between the Notes, and it was really amazing to be able to go out with Jordan and meet a bunch of the students that are out there. And I think a big part of the film was starting to discover some of the characters who, sort of personify classical music a little bit, which is sometimes a little more uppity and a little pretentious, and being able to get into contact with them was really fun.
And then Champ.
Hi, I'm Champ Ensminger. I am the director and editor of YAI NIN, which is about my grandmother. Newen Pinyo is the owner of a Thai sausage factory that basically became our family's claim to fame and brought made our family successful enough to basically bring my mother and her 3 siblings to America to school and to raise kids and all that. And it's just a day in the life of this woman who's basically a mother hen, to all the people that live around her, while she's also trying to navigate a long distance relationship with all of her Thai American family. And she also basically functioned as the production coordinator, sort of like location scout, looking for all the places that we were filming, and just kind of like really filled in all the gaps for our production, which was a very small crew, but her personality really shined through in the making of it. That's
awesome. That's kind of cool. It's like a family affair. So I'd also love to ask, like, what inspired you guys to tell these stories? Some of you already answered, but like, how did you guys meet them too? How did you come into contact? How did the conversation start about these documentaries? And we'll go to Anthony.
You're muted.
I'm so sorry. Oh no.
So Farming Slowly is about my cousin who, so she started to farm and volunteer on farms when she was in college. And so I knew she wanted to eventually have her own farm. So when she was able to get one, to rent one out, and when she was able to make some sort of profit, I thought that would be a good story then to tell a story versus like her just volunteering, right? So yeah, and I think her drive and her passion for farming and for the land that she farms on, and for like creating a community around food, because that's what she wants to do, is have a small community that cares about food and cares about eating well. And that's what she's creating right now. So I think that was a good time to tell her story.
And then Amanda?
At the time, I guess this would have been, when did we film this? 2018. 2018, I had been working in unscripted TV for a couple of years, and I was thinking, I want to make something. I want to make a film. I want to make a doc film. You know, a little bit borrowing from the concepts of, you know, shooting unscripted TV, but also, you know, having that sort of filmic eye, something that's very beautiful. And so I actually just found Min-jae on Instagram. I think that we had crossed paths earlier because I think I went to high school with his older brother or something like that. So we had, somehow I was followed him on Instagram, and I saw this beautiful, beautiful, like East Asian inspired pottery, specifically Japanese and Korean inspired pottery. And I just reached out to him. We got some Korean food, we chatted, he told me about his life. And I just found it very, a lot of, you know, the things that he was searching for were very moving to me. And this is sort of like a story about an artist in progress, right? Like it's not an artist who has been really successful. It's not an artist who's just starting. It's someone who's like finding their way. And that was also very relatable to me as an artist finding our way. So we not only asked the question of, you know, is pottery an object of merit? You know, are we artists of merit for doing what we do? And that's sort of the through line of that. And I was just so lucky that he was able to connect me with his mentor. We shot there, and I reached out to another Japanese Canadian ceramic artist and put them in touch too to kind of chat about their art. And now Min-jae has his own studio in South Korea, so that's kind of amazing.
That's incredible.
Dope.
And Jordan and Ian?
So the host of the festival, the music festival, reached out to me because, you know, he just told me that this is his first year making it, and he wanted me to come document it. And at that time, I didn't know Ian then, but I know Ian and him, they have like a relationship. But what was really exciting was that it took place in Taiwan, my hometown. So I really wanted to go, and honestly, the creative flow with it was just, we were just kind of like figuring out things on the fly. Like we didn't know who our cast members were. It's just a whole school of people, and part of it was just spending maybe like the first 2 days just vibing it out, seeing, you know, who we connect with the most. And, you know, sometimes it was like me and Ian at the cafeteria table, just like, what do you think about that guy? That guy looks pretty interesting. Should we talk to him? I don't want to approach him. It's not cool. We should do it. It might be interesting. We gotta get started. So it was just like, you know, who did we want to approach? And ultimately we found 4 people who I think are just so diverse in where they come from, in terms of like why they're so passionate about music and what's their like end game with it. And that was a big deal of just showing that there's no one route to being successful as a musician or loving the craft. It's all about like your own background and telling your own story.
Yeah, so echoing a little bit what Jordan was talking about is we didn't really know each other when the project first started. We were 2 people who were opposite sides of the United States. I was in New York, he was in LA, and I had more of a classical music background. My dad's a musician, but Jordan had like a much stronger filmmaking background. You know, he's older than me, he has more experience. So I think that was like a great combo. I think I came onto the project with a little bit more, you know, background in music. So for me, like, I understand a lot of people find classical music sort of hard to engage with. It's sometimes pretentious. It's sometimes the barrier of entry is very high. If you want to go watch concerts, you got to pay a lot, stuff like that. So I think, but I had a lot of friends who love music growing up, whether that's like, you know, hip hop or that's classical music. And sometimes they love both equally. And some classical musicians I know love hip hop more. They just know they could never be hip hop musicians, right? So it's like, but I think for a lot of it was demystifying classical music in the modern era a little bit. Like, oh, you know, why do 20-year-olds find this like 300-year-old tradition like really, satisfying and really fun to do. And why are they still inspired by it? And, how is it still relevant to, a pretty large population of people on the planet still? So I think for me, that was a big reason for wanting to do this.
That's really cool. And then Chia?
Yeah, so my grandmother, I've had 30 years of research and development, or opportunity to get to know this person. I will say that the context in which this was made was, my interactions with her as a kid were these very abbreviated visits that she would make to the United States, and I would go to Thailand as a kid, usually during the holidays, and just be around her for maybe a week at a time. It wasn't until I moved to Thailand, to Chiang Mai, where she lives and where I was born, in 2014 for about a year and a half, and just really spent a lot of time around her and contextualizing her not just as my grandmother, but as this businesswoman who has this pretty amazing reputation. And then I lived in, living in my hometown was especially transformative in general. And I feel like the film is kind of a love letter to the city of Chiang Mai, aside from this piece about her. But in that time that I lived there, a lot of people were like, "Oh man, your grandma is badass. Like she's a hero." And I think it was just finally taking the hint that people wanted to hear her story, or kind of like you just get kind of a slice of it. And I moved back to the States, got my footing as an editor at a production company, and I decided to pitch it to my office basically, and they were like, "Yeah, this sounds amazing. Whatever help you need." And we filmed it in 3 days. I hired a crew from Bangkok that road tripped up to Chiang Mai. Everybody was like, "Yeah, we love Chiang Mai. Bangkok is way too hot right now. Let's do something else. Let's do like this short, like emotional, or like this personal documentary, and eat a lot of really good food in the north." And and so it was obviously, like you said, a family affair, but there was a lot of support from. It was just kind of a spiraling thing that people were like, "Yeah, I want to hear more about your grandma. She sounds amazing."
That's really cool. And also in the course of your filming, because you spent quite a few weeks with people, how did your relationship change with your cast and your characters, and what is it like today? Like, do you still keep in contact? You said check up on each other.
Yeah, so Catherine has a newsletter every week that she sends out to update her people on her about her farm, and it's the people who are part of it as like part of her CSA, which is community supported agriculture. So she updates everybody on like COVID and the fires up in Portland. But yeah, me and her are pretty close. So every now and then we'll talk about something, or I'll check up on her farm. So yeah, it's been great. And then if it does come to like two more years, maybe I might do a follow-up documentary on where she is. But yeah, we're pretty close.
That's really awesome. And Amanda?
I think I've mentioned before, Min-jae Lee is now in South Korea making his own work, which is awesome. I think after the film, he moved to Montana for a little bit to be an apprentice to another ceramic artist there, and then later moved to South Korea, I think Icheon, to become an apprentice there to a Korean ceramic artist. And now he's got his own thing. So that's been amazing to watch. We talk on Instagram. And his mentor that we went to go visit, Timothy Smith, that we shot at his studio at Gleason Brook Pottery. We're connected on Instagram too. It seems like business as usual for him. We always talk about how we have to go back up north, that part of Canada, to get some ice cream. Apparently has the best ice cream in this tiny little shop nearby. And Chris Sora, the Japanese-Canadian ceramic artist, he doesn't have social media, but we talk on email, and he's very excited to hear all about the sort of the film and where it's going and where it's playing. So he's a very humble, lovely man.
That's amazing. And then Jordan and Ian, what about you guys? Because some people were from Juilliard, right? And some were from UCLA, so they're kind of on both of your coasts.
Yeah, that's a big part with the festival. People came from all over. There's we didn't get to film them, but there was like Japanese people there as well, and then people from like other parts of in Europe. But yeah, it had yeah, filming this one was one of the more fun productions I've been a part of. It had a summer camp vibe, I would say, where in the beginning, um, you just kind of feel it out. They're there to practice their instruments and do rehearsals, and we're there to try to find the story. Like, where is the story? And by leaning into the students and like seeing where they came from, um, we just became really good friends. And at first, it was just filming like wide shots just to try to get our coverage. But then, as we like zoned in and I could be personable with the people who were comfortable to be on camera, we eventually started hanging out. At one point we went to an arcade, and there was one day where there was a typhoon that happened when we were filming. So we had to stop all rehearsals. So we decided to go to the Taipei 101 to hang out because that was probably one of the safer places to go during a typhoon. And also because we just wanted to do something. And yeah, and the last time I saw them was in February. I went to New York and I saw a couple of them in Juilliard.
Yeah, so it's been really, really cool because a lot of the people that we were able to follow and get to be friends with at the festival were on the cusp of, one part of their career. So I don't know, for those who have watched the film, Pee-wee, one of the kids there, he was actually applying to music schools in the US at the time. So since then, he's actually, he applied to Juilliard, he applied to New England Conservatory, and I got to see him when he came over because he's like, yeah, Ian, like I've decided I'm going to go to NEC. I'm going to be in the US the next couple of years. So it's been really, really cool seeing that progression. I think it was pretty great that we were able to, in essence, live with them, right? I think a lot of documentaries, maybe you're following a subject. If you know them really well, you're able to, you spend years with them. But, if it's...
Live with them as in it was a campus and
it was a campus.
Different dorms to hang out in.
Yeah. So, but like every day we could spend, it wasn't just like, oh, we shoot with you guys and then, 10 hours, that's it. It's like, good 18 hours a day you could spend around, people that you're trying to get to know. And then so it became much more personal and much more sort of easygoing. I think it wasn't like a really kind of tight, uppity, kind of shoot. Nothing like that.
Yeah, so my grandmother, we keep in close touch with. I don't, for those who have seen the film, my cousins and I made an effort to try and find as many great dog pictures as we can, because that's how we keep an eye on her. We go into the Line app and send her funny pictures. We're absolutely gutted that we can't visit anyone in Thailand right now, and it's probably, especially for her, for the best. But she's seen the film. I showed it to her the last time I was in Thailand for a cousin's wedding. We had just finished the final cut, and it was on the way to the airport. She was watching it from her iPad before we came out to like get on our plane, and she was like, "It's pretty good." What's interesting is, and I'm sure a lot of my fellow filmmakers can relate, a lot of the process in learning about and researching your subject is through pre-interviews, just kind of the step-by-step process of having casual conversations about the subject that you're wanting to talk about leading into your shoot, so that way you're making the most out of their time, and etc. So I knew a lot about her beforehand and kind of blocked out our shoot as if it were almost like a music video or something. Basically just like have her in a scenario, ask these specific questions. And I've learned so much in her spontaneous like responses to things that we didn't plan. For example, I didn't know until during the shoot that she was an actress in a radio drama back in the 50s. So she would play different characters for like a scripted radio play. And I just thought that's amazing. Like, I don't think there's any like evidence of that. There's any like left, recordings of it. But I mean, that's just like something random. Like, your older family members are secretly heroes if you just know to ask them.
That's amazing. Wow, that's why I think I love Jock so much, is that you really get to like be a part of a community and like live with other people and experience life through a different lens. But one of my questions for you, Champ, actually had to do with that scene of your grandmother showing you the WhatsApp with the different dogs, and I was wondering, like, because I feel like the sense like that you were really there at that moment. And so I was wondering how much you decided of your own self that you decided to put in the film, and how you decided to keep more objective in some parts versus like more subjective in others.
I think what I was learning is the shoot was going so well. Like the crew, the skeleton crew that we worked with from Bangkok was just so on it, lighting wise, and just everything just kind of on the fly, run and gun filming. And my problem with it was that there was no friction, like there was no spontaneity with it. And my grandmother knows how to ham it up to be on camera. Like she just can kind of like get into a mode like that. So any spontaneous moments in the film, I kind of injected in there to kind of get her off her toes, because I know that she's like an unassumingly funny woman. Like she a little stressed out. There's just like this energy about her that is what I was trying to go for. At the beginning, when you first see her, when she is picking up her phone, that's me asking my mother to call her. And that was totally unexpected. And so that was a very genuine, reaction from her. And as far as injecting myself, I feel like it was just learning about, just kind of tightening all the screws of a shoot, but then seeing how you can kind of stretch it a little bit. I mean, we were lucky that we had a lot of, it was mostly very controlled situations. Like our subject wasn't moving a lot. It was like, we were intentionally looking at Yasujiro Ozu movies to keep it very static, very just kind of like little vignettes. So the style was very dialed in, and I had a lot of trust in my DP, Liam Morgan. But yeah, it was honestly just to try to like tilt it one way, and just see how she reacts. Because that's what documentary is. It's just watching somebody react to their environment, and that's how you learn about them, right? So.
Awesome. And then Amanda, a question for you too. I love like the form that your film took. I love the aspect ratio you chose. And I also thought using the device of having a recorded voicemail to bridge the travel of Min-jae to and from his mentors was so lovely. And I was wondering if you talk more about those choices, especially the recording, and if he did those, he'd written them before, or it was kind of on the fly.
Yeah, so shot it in anamorphic in this like very wide aspect ratio, which when I was talking to my DP, who actually we weren't dating at the time, now we're dating. When I was talking to my DP, he was like, "Are you sure you want to do this because it's a doc?" And it's not, it's not like a narrative film where you can necessarily like set things up in advance too much. And I said, yes. And to add to that fact, this doc also had a production designer. So it's like a production designed doc, mostly because I think there are a lot of, instances where everything is sort of on the fly, but there are also a lot of instances where they're sort of sitting at the couch and chatting, or they're sort of like sitting at a pottery wheel and just, making pottery. There's a lot of very still moments, and in that stillness, much as, like we're looking at a bowl or something, there is beauty in that. And I wanted to make sure that reflected the beauty of their craft that they were doing too. In terms of the voice calls and things, that was actually done after. I didn't give Min-jae any guidance. I just said, if you were on your way, like imagine that we were still, driving to see this person, and imagine like what you would say to them in that scenario. And he just recorded them on his iPhone and sent it to us. So they were authentic in the way that it was his, original words, but not necessarily in that time and space. Just to sort of bridge things so that we can understand how he's feeling, what he wants to get out of the trip, not just, oh, here's this person and you're meeting this person. And it just gives you an idea of their previous relationship too, right? Like with Timothy Smith, he's his mentor. He knows him already. So there's that pre-existing, hey, I can't wait to see you again. Whereas with Chris Sora, he's meeting him for the first time. So it's, I admire you from a distance and I want to learn from you. So those were the effects of that.
That's awesome. I definitely feel like it worked. I really feel like I was going on a journey with him, and it's a wonderful way to present exposition.
Thank you.
And then Anthony, for you, I was wondering if you talk a little about your artistic decisions, especially with pacing, because I feel like the pacing really encapsulated Catherine's philosophy of like slowing life down and kind of rejecting the Western idea that you always have to be producing something. So I'd love to know if you had any influences or in the choices.
Yeah, so her farm is called Mora Mora Farm, and Mora Mora in the Zimbabwe language is slowly, slowly. And so I was like, okay, well, that's perfect for doing slow motion and beautiful shots of like plants and things like that. So I was like, okay, easy. But yeah, that's like her thought process too, or like her philosophy is like just to slow things down. So like Western culture, we're all about like production and doing things and always like grinding and hustling, which is good to an extent. But her way of looking at the world is to slow down, make sure things are good, make sure it's more about quality than quantity. And that's what she wants on her farm, is like to have quality produce that people like, rather than just kind of planting and selling to as many restaurants and places as possible.
And then Jordan and Ian, something a little bit more technical, because you were filming and recording instruments and soloists in a live orchestra, and you also were filming from different angles oftentimes. So what was that like to put that all together? Like, were there any challenges, especially you're a cinematographer? Did you really have to plan out and understand the music before shooting?
We didn't have to understand the music because it is what they give us and what we get, but finding a really good sound recordist was very crucial, especially if you're recording like all these instruments. So we found someone, Braulio, that's Ian's friend, and then now is a really good friend of mine. He killed it. He was a one-person band doing all the sound, and we were a really light crew, so like we needed that type of like mentality. So he did a great job in terms of covering the interviews as well as the range to be able to do full orchestra.
So this is not the first time of mine doing a classical music documentary. I made one a few years ago when I was just starting film school. And at the time, I remember having a lot of trouble, doing concert coverage, being able to work with the director. One of my great mentors, Christine Choi, and trying to figure out like, how do you cover this in a way that, it feels cinematic, but also doesn't feel forced or, like faked in a lot of ways. As a cinematographer on this one and as producer, I think it was helpful to be able to do more run and gun and be able to just trust myself, be like, okay, I'm the producer and I'm the person shooting. So, I can work with Jordan and I can review footage every night and we'll know what we get. We know what we want. I think the big actually differences, and I'm echoing Jordan a little bit, is that Braulio, who's watching right now, by the way, Braulio, Braulio is this crazy awesome like music buff. Like he plays classical guitar, he goes to concerts on his own, he loves classical music, and I think he experiences music on an emotional level and on a physical level that me and Jordan don't necessarily feel all the time. So a lot of the time when we were crafting the story and we were crafting the not just the visuals, but also a lot of the soundscape of the movie and the kind of sounds that are going to be more emotional to people and might come across a little stronger to people who actually care deeply about classical music, he was really helpful with. And he was able to try and find a story in the audio and in the music. And that was really, really awesome. And that was like a whole level of depth that, me and Jordan are I think more generally visually creative.
Yeah. Like in order to capture that visually, we did a lot of like some multi-camera, like for interviews and for orchestra. But for the most part, a lot of it was single camera because I feel like that's just one of the best ways to be intimate with your cast, right? So to not be so set up, at least for what we were trying to do, people who weren't comfortable on camera. So it's just having a single camera and just this is it. It's bare bones, and I can just talk with them directly.
I really felt like the music and the visuals all came together really lovely. Like the music became its own character, and the visuals really complemented that. So kind of a question back to everybody. I would love to talk about like your editing process, because these are short docs, but you spent a summer in Taiwan, or you spent a couple weeks up in Oregon with your cousin. Like, what was the process of editing all this down to be 20 minutes or under? And do you have any advice for people trying to fit these rich stories into such a limited amount of time?
Yeah, so I did the first 5 days with her, and then I was staying up there for 10 days. So at her house, so I was able to review the footage, see what else I needed, and then I did 2 more days of shooting, which is one was with the community, the few community of hers, and then one just some aerial shots of her farm. But yeah, it's very helpful to review the footage and to edit on the spot, and then being lucky to be there already to reshoot anything if you need it. As far as the editing goes, I was the one editing it, and I just took about maybe like a month and a half to like get it to pretty set to where I wanted it to be, and then I just gave her to review it, and then to the sound mixer or sound designer and composer to do their stuff. But yeah, the editing was interesting because it was like a slower paced film, and I generally like to edit a little quicker, and so trying to figure out the balance between not making it too slow but still making it interesting and still trying to have it flow. I think that was really fun to figure out, and it was difficult, and that's what made it pretty fun.
And Amanda, what about you?
We shot in 2 blocks. The first block was 2 days, and the second block was 5 days, about a month apart. And then it actually took a very long time to edit, like a year to edit, I think, because everyone was sort of working on it on a part-time basis too. So was I. And it's because we shot anamorphic. Also, shout out to my DP, Benjamin Wong. If you ever want to hire a great anamorphic shooter, that's his specialty. Anyway, so he shot it in a way where I guess, I'm not sure if I'm describing this properly, but when you bring it into the edit, you have to conform it. Like when you look at the anamorphic footage on your computer, it looks like kind of squished like this, and then when you bring it to mirror, you have to like conform it to make it wider, I think. So that was kind of an interesting technical process that I had never seen before. And then I guess I just sort of used sort of the format that I was doing in unscripted TV, where you would you have a script that's like got 2 table columns. One of them's audio, one of them's your video, and then you sort of like lay out a script or like a structure of how you want your film to go. Gave it to my editor, amazing editor, Catherine Lyons, and she just honestly, she's the savior of this film, because the first cut that she sent me was like 2 hours long based on my script. And then she was like, okay, well, let's cut this down. You can't be precious with this. And then we had an amazing sound designer too, Alana Raymond, who I think is like, I don't know, you think about pottery and like the sounds that you hear, I don't know if you really notice it, but it's kind of like ASMR-ish, if you know what I mean. Like to hear the sounds of like the clay squishing, or, you know, like someone moving a bowl, that was really important. So she was really great. And we had a wonderful, the production company I was working with at the time, Breakthrough Entertainment, they, the man, Mike Palmer, who runs the post-production department, offered to mix my film for free. Which was like just amazing. And I was totally going to pay him, and I was like, send me the invoice. And he was like, it's free. And I was just floored. So it was post-production, editing, I was so lucky. It just took a long time, that's all.
I think Jordan and Ian.
The editor for this project was my roommate, his name is Ben Scher. It's a great guy. First we needed someone who understood Mandarin. There was it's mostly in English, but that was a requirement. And he's Singaporean, so he was able to understand it. And but also having him as a roommate was just great, because I could just leave my room and then go into his, and it's like, how's it going? The process was very hands-on. I'm like a really firm believer in cramming the edit, or just when you go at it, just go with full force. Otherwise, it really does last for a crazy amount of time. So the editing part took about 2 weeks. I spent about maybe like 2 days transcribing all the interviews, and then we would just start picking apart the story. So there was a loose plan on how it was going to work out, but also just, find the footage itself. We filmed for almost a month, so there's a lot of magic here and there that we want to capture. But then how do you combine it all together? There's things that, like footage that we lost, that I was really hoping that we would make it. For example, one of the violinists, her name's Catherine. She does Taekwondo, and she was wearing a Taekwondo shirt during some of the rehearsals. So I was like, oh, it would be great to see you just do some kicks. And we did it on like a crazy high mountain and during sunset, and there was tons of mosquitoes, but you can't tell on camera. And she did all those kicks, but it didn't fit the story. We just wanted to do it because it looked cool. It's all about the story.
Yeah, I think Jordan was much more hands-on in the editing process than I was. I was in Hong Kong or Shanghai at the time when he was doing the editing. I was there seeing family, but it was pretty crazy seeing it all come together. I think it was helpful that we had a lot of time with the students or with the musicians out there, because the story was getting crafted sort of along the way, and then it got recrafted again in the editing room. And I think, like, it's sort of cliche to say that the story is made in the editing room, but it's without a doubt true on this one. That, we came in thinking it was one thing, we finished the festival thinking it was another, and then Jordan finished this whole thing up, making a whole different, awesome kind of story.
Yeah, so I was the editor on YAI NIN, and I'm an editor full-time at a production company up here in Seattle called World Famous. And I work around a bunch of really rad people who we're really grateful to have something else to look at besides commercial work. I don't know who else has worked on commercial gigs, but it can be really just like life-sucking. Shout out to all our clients. But everybody was like, yes, show us a cut. We'll help you, like, tweak some things or like give you notes or whatever. And like I work around a bunch of really badass animators as well. And so it was interesting. The edit never really floated far away from the time that it is now, around 13 minutes or so. I did script it a little bit before we left, because I knew I had to budget 3 days with a crew from Bangkok, and there was no like takebacks. It's for those of us who have filmed abroad, it's like you've got your footage, and then wherever you're going to do the post, like that's what you got, unless you want to block out another shoot. But yeah, so it was just my challenge of like, this is what we've got, and I've got animators in the wings who are friends of mine who will do it for cheap to compress any story that my grandmother tells, that we want to have like a little fun animation segment, which is what happened. She talks about how she would ride a scooter around town and take my mother and her 3 siblings, or all the school kids, like trying to like cram onto a scooter. And I just always thought that the way that she delivered that story was so hilarious that it had to be animated in some way. So that was one strategy of trying to like compress a section of the edit that was kind of dragging. One of the other huge challenges of the edit is that I speak Thai conversationally, and I speak Central Thai. My grandmother speaks a northern dialect that is very stylized, and my mother was the one that conducted the interviews, and I wanted to make sure that was like a very intentional interaction. Like the way that my grandmother was delivering her responses was because she was speaking to her daughter. That being said, it was a challenge to work with my mom with the initial translation, and then in my head translating it into English subtitles with phrases that people can identify as far as a Western audience that may be unfamiliar if you were trying to like translate it exactly word for a dialect that's basically kind of a receding language. So it was a really fascinating process linguistically. And which, I mean, the intention for the film was also to kind of to preserve that northern dialect in some way. I mean, it's a family story, but it's also she's the family member in our family who's the last one to speak that language, essentially. So we thought that that was really important.
Before we go into another general question, I think there's one from audience for you, and they asked, since this documentary is about your cousin, are you planning on making another documentary about your other family members?
Well, if any of my family members does something interesting, I might consider it. No, but as of recently, like making this doc and then growing older, I feel like I've gotten more interested in stories about my family and like my parents and what they've gone through, especially like Vietnam War and coming to America. And then me watching movies and reading up on these things about the immigration. So yeah, I definitely am interested in my family more in these kinds of stories. And there's stories that are underrepresented. So yeah, definitely for sure. If something comes up, but they just got to be interesting.
Thank you. And kind of a general one again. One thing I really love about this doc block is it's all about people whose actions and achievements have become like a way of self-reflection almost. And I was wondering that while you were filming, like, did you come to see film and creation of film as also kind of a way of self-reflection, to change your viewpoint on like your passion and your craft?
Yeah, so I feel like me and my cousin have like the same kind of personalities and mindsets sometimes because we're so close and we talk a lot, that I tend to like reflect on things too. And so this documentary, I placed a lot of value on like reflection and thinking about how you want to live your life, how you want to go forward, and what you think of like the land that you're living on, that you're producing on. So yeah, I mean, with all filmmakers, I feel like we have to be interested in something at first, right? To want to make a film about it, to like start that fire. So yeah, there's always like a little bit of me in some way, even though it's about another person. There has to be like something that pulls me towards, so like either reflection or like the drive that she has to work on a farm. I think that's for every filmmaker. It's like you have to have a little piece of yourself in the films you make.
And Amanda, I know you talked a lot about how the whole film became an interrogation of what is an object of merit or what is an artist of merit. So I'm interested.
Yeah, it's like we're the clay being molded, right? We're always the artists in process. We're always growing. We're always discovering and just thinking about what sort of influences we have and what direction we want to go in is so important, right? And I think while making this film, both Min Jae and I were feeling kind of sort of not jaded, but yeah, maybe a little bit jaded with you sort of the commercialization of our craft, of whether it be film or pottery. There's a section there where he's talking to his mentor, and his mentor is like, well, it doesn't matter if you want to make black pots. If no one's going to buy black pots, then you're like, what are you making them for, right? So it's sort of, exploring this. I think it is a self-reflection on, what matters, like what matters to us as an artist, like what makes it a project of merit, what makes it of worth. And I think, he answers it very succinctly at the end, where he says, like, when people use my work, that's where I find joy. And for me personally, when people watch my films, that's where I find joy.
And then Jordan, E, for you too, because Young says at the beginning of the film that playing music and practice is a method of self-discovery. So I'm wondering if...
For sure. I mean, I feel like one of the reasons why I was drawn to these cast members was because I was finding myself talking with each one of them. Each one of them brought something different to the table. One of them, his inspiration was from his parents. He just didn't want to disappoint his parents, and he just wanted to work hard and practice hard and get as famous as he can get. And I was like, damn, like, yeah, I want to do my parents proud. And meanwhile, this other people, her name's Angela, she said that, her inspiration is like, if you're scared and timid, the audience is gonna smell that a mile away. And I've also had that type of mentality where it's like, man, when I get on set, I have to perform, like be there. Like people are looking to me as a role model, and like whatever energy I put out there, that can help like get that in return. And it's just really important for me to just sharpen my craft as I'm like seeing them. And so that's honestly why this project was so fun to make, because it's just seeing them working on their thing while we're working on ours at the same time. And it's just this culmination of art coming together.
I think we're all creatives. We're all creatively inclined. We're all in the process of creating art of one form or another. I think anyone who's a creative knows how hard it can be to try to find your own place in an art form that has centuries of heritage. Filmmaking, we have 100 years of heritage. If you look at all the different disciplines that come into filmmaking, maybe even longer. Music, I think, is probably, goes further back as a non-visual art form. And so being able to see a lot of young musicians, working with something that, a lot of times is a little bit more like, oh, there's a right way to play classical music, there's a right way to do. But seeing like people try to mold that into a way for them to express themselves is very inspiring. And it sort of provided a little bit of a lens of like, okay, it feels like a lot of the great things in film have already been done. Like a lot of the great, innovations in movies have already happened. And, outside of, new technology, outside of like new ways of changing the way stories are even told, like how do you innovate as a storyteller? And I think one of the answers from one of the characters in our film in Everett was to look in, to just go further in, look at what makes you different from the other people who have already made things, and then try to find something there. Stop necessarily imitating what people have told you is good, and just have fun with the things that you like, and don't be afraid to just sit alone with it for years if you have to. And that there's something brave and something genuine about that people will end up caring about.
And then Champ, like your grandmother is so self-assured. She seems like so sure in who she is. So seeing her reflect back on her life, did that spark anything for you in your filmmaking career or thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see myself in a lot of ways like my grandmother. We're both kind of workaholics. And the film, I feel like, serves as kind of a reminder collectively for a lot of things, aside from my experience of Chiang Mai specifically, of Thailand, and the way I wanted to convey the experience of visiting a grandmother, specifically, an Asian grandmother, and from the lens of an Asian American who's going back to a homeland and kind of what that feels like. That's the reminder for what I feel like my target audience is you and all the other Asian American festivals that we've been in. It's a reminder for my grandmother to kind of see herself, how busy she gets, and to just slow down. Like, that was very intentional, her putting her in her garden and just kind of being more reflective at the end of the film, because I mean, we kind of just need a reminder like that. A day in the life of a filmmaker is going to be incredibly busy because you're wearing a lot of hats, and yeah, I guess I wanted to make something that not only was respectful to my family history and her as a character, but also, yeah, like I said, as a collective reminder to just kind of like take things a little slow. You can be at this level with your grandma, and you can be at this level, just like, whatever your temple is, whatever your garden is, just tend to that and reflect. So.
Oh, that's awesome. So kind of the last question to wrap it all up, I would love to know what is next for all of you. What projects do you have planned? What do you hope to see in the documentary world from yourself, from others? You can give a plug if you want to.
Yeah, so as with before, I'm like interested in like more stories about my family now. So I started writing what I think would be a novella. It's called Tales from a Vietnamese Household. And it's just like a bunch of stories that I've that I remember as a kid. And then during the pandemic and everything, so much time at home, so I spent a lot of time writing more, so working on a feature and hopefully a musical that I'm really excited about. And I really like musicals and music, so we'll see. We'll see.
Say.
And then Amanda.
Got some stuff moving right now. I've actually concurrently I have another film in other festivals right now actually. It's called The Way We Are, and it's nominated for an Iris Prize in Cardiff, Wales. That's starting I think October 8th. So, and it's playing right now at Inside Out in Toronto. And what else do I have? Oh, I'm in a band. I'm in an all East Asian alt rock band, and we just have a debut EP that came out this August. It's called The Parts We Could Not Abandon. You can find it on Spotify, literally any streaming platform except Amazon, because Amazon sucks. And I am working on a web series right now. We just finished shooting. I'm in post-production for a web series, a very short 4-episode web series called How TO Art. You can find us on Instagram, TO like Toronto. So it's Toronto-based, sort of looking at artists in the city. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I have 2 exciting projects that I'm working on right now. One of them is with Jubilee Media. They're based in LA. They're a great YouTube channel. They're doing a co-production with Netflix where there's a new movie coming out called Over the Moon, like all Asian animated cast. So I'm helping them do a promo for it. The plan is to film 5 different Asian families and just talk about heritage and culture and just want to promote yeah, Asian culture in general. That'll be out end of the month on Netflix YouTube channel. That's pretty exciting. And right now, the other thing is I'm wrapping up on a feature documentary for the Try Guys. We filmed that last year, and so now it's pretty much buttoning everything up, and we're trying to release it early December.
So I have 3 things that I'm kind of working on right now that I'm having a lot of fun with. The first one is I'm in post-production for another classical music documentary. It's like one of those Zoom.
Another one?
Yeah, another one, right? Another. It's like a Zoom documentary, but it goes into how some of the world's best classical musicians, like principle of like Met Opera, like how are they getting through COVID as musicians? Like how does not being able to play in an orchestra as an orchestra player careerly, how does that destroy your mental, and how do you recover from that? How do you get on from that? I'm working on an Asian American horror short film. So it's about a young girl who goes and meets her boyfriend's family, who are recent immigrants, and how the filial piety in that family has transformed the grandmother into this demon that sort of feeds on the lifeblood of young people. So that one is drawing a lot from anxieties of the director and some of the anxieties that people, young Asian Americans, might feel when in the face of overbearing grandparents or heritage, and how do you balance that a little bit with your own identity. And the third one is I'm beginning development on this documentary about my grandpa, who fought in the Korean War, but on the side of the North Koreans and the Chinese. And it stems from like his first time eating kimchi was in North Korea, and the second time was in the United States. So sort of using that to track that story and see, how does someone from his generation sort of see how China has changed and where to go forwards from here. Yeah.
Oh.
I just want to say, Ian, your second project, the horror project, sounds sick. That sounds amazing.
Thank you.
For your grandpa story, eh.
Yeah, I'd love to share more about it if you guys are interested. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as future projects, I think I was tucking this project away around a busy commercial project schedule at a commercial production company, and my project lately has just been to be very present for all the festivals that this doc has been in. It's my first festival run, so and it being very Asian American specific has been very special to me because I've met a lot of creatives like yourselves in the process. When I felt like, I think in a lot of ways we all were in a vacuum before we made these projects. That being said, I'm not actively working on this, but I feel like I've been stating this in Q&As, and if I state it, then it may come to exist. But I, ever since hearing about my grandmother being in audio dramas, I've been actually kind of fascinated with the audio drama as a medium, given the constraints that we're in. Like, you just cast your characters and they record in their own time, and then you can kind of like get a sound design guy to like make this space. But I don't know if anybody has explored other podcasts or things like that. There was the one Homecoming that came out a few years back, which is amazing. If you haven't listened to it before, it's a pretty stacked cast, but it's like a fascinating and like gripping audio drama. Anyway, yeah. So as far as like COVID projects, like audio drama seems like a very interesting thing that doesn't take a whole lot of production strain. So exploring that right now.
Cool.
You guys have so much cool stuff going on. That's awesome. I can't wait till like next year when we get to see them all again. Oh yeah. Well, I think that is about wrapping up the time that we have, and I want to thank you guys so much for taking like an hour out of your night to talk with us about your shorts. I've been recommending them to everybody. My parents are gonna watch them in California. Like, got someone watching them in Philadelphia, so they'll be seen all around. But if anybody watching would like to see them, they are streaming right now on AVE, so go and buy your tickets. And thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting.
Of course, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.